All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining this exciting session, which we have a guest from Accenture, which I'm going to introduce in a minute. We're going to talk about scaling and deploying Aera globally. In this session with Accenture, we're going to talk about through the lens of a specific customer story and journey, all the capabilities that Accenture has built and their ability to ultimately scale Aera and the decision intelligence transformation at a global scale. So with us, we have today Chris McDivitt. Chris is a managing director and actually one of the partners in the supply chain operations practice in North America. He leads the South, and he's been involved since the beginning of our partnership with Aera across a number of different customers, and we're super happy to have you today. And I'm Eduardo Tobias. I lead our partnerships alliances organization globally for Aera. So welcome, Chris, and thank you for taking some time for being with us today.
Thank you. It's great being here.
Awesome. Perfect. So just to kick it off, why don't you give us some context on this specific client situation and what was the problem statement? I mean, why did they even call us, right, for a proposal? What was the issue they were facing?
Yeah, the client was really looking to get into this space of autonomizing decisions, and they saw an opportunity to look at how they could drive execution of their supply chain decisions. Traditionally sitting in control tower capability, with a greater level of intelligence, and to start the journey of using artificial intelligence and autonomizing overall decision making, especially for those tactical decisions of getting product out the door.
Got it. Okay, so they had that specific need for decisions from the get-go. So what do you think drove that? I mean, what was the pain point that we're feeling that they could not, if you will, fulfill with alternative technologies or applications?
Yeah, I mean, I think just like every, I would say, traditional supply chain organization, they had a good set of optimization capability, balancing demand and supply. And as many refreshes have been out there, I would say in regards to planning capability, many clients are realizing that there's a need to elevate the practitioner or that supply chain planner or individuals that are sitting in sales and execution functions to get out of tactical decision making and to really be more proactive and strategic in nature. It's also with the capability of scenario planning, it's overwhelming. So it's really looking at how do you get after segments of your business that you can start to get on the AI journey in a trustful way, and start to automate decisions and bring in a self-learning capability.
Yeah, I got it. Makes sense. So why don't we clear that it's a big problem that we're trying to face, and the fit was very strong for the digital intelligence. Let's talk a little bit about the approach in terms of how you got organized to go about this problem and deploying and ultimately scaling the Aera Decision Cloud. Can you walk us through that journey? And I'm going to use a slide to go through this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think the journey was an important one, and we had an initial set of scope that was, I would say, narrow in its journey of getting after a particular business unit, and looking at functions that looks at allocating inventory on a day-to-day basis, or looking at scenarios or use cases. And we did that purposely because Aera is not a big transformation platform deployment. You're building skill sets, or you're building skills in Aera terminology for specific use cases that really sits on top of these platforms and gets after orchestration of decisions. And to do that, we learned that we could actually do that quite successfully, quickly, more importantly. But then we started to open the aperture as to what would it really take, what would be those core tenets or areas that we'd really need to build out a set of global and scalable deployment capability. And these were really the 6 tenant areas that we got after. We recognized that the first one, we had to balance and come in with a structured methodology of developing purposeful automation that would allow us to manage ideation to creation of use cases, right? And that's an important process of the methodology, meaning that there has to be a level of governance. There's also, from an ideation factory perspective, there's a need to have this ongoing and ingestion and maintenance of your portfolio of ideas that becomes use cases that it will enable effective planning and utilization of that development capacity. And when you think about how you develop a set of use cases for one business or one geo, you need to go through the exercise of understanding what's that fit gap analysis to really understand the match of those current use cases, or what are those local nuances from an impact of design, or understanding the data differences and the potential changes to that data integration approach. So that's one of the things that we took into consideration. We also took into consideration, when it came to ideation to use case development, Accenture uses this holistic approach that we call prime value chain, that is a consistent approach of capturing where is the automation potential or the efficiency potential, and that's looking at what's the percentage of effort spent at level 4 processes. And where's their non-value or added work or tactical decision making, and understanding what are the types of intelligent automation that could be applied there, specifically, capabilities like Aera. So that's an important part of the process, right? Is making sure that you have a structured methodology around automation. The next one was around design, and design, governance, and overall excellence is really important. It's the foundation of building Aera skills, meaning that if you're going to drive value realization and enable global scalability, Aera skills from a design build perspective can be done in agile sprints for certain, and there needs to be a certain minimal level of design needs to be completed to really avoid rework. But there is kind of 4 key steps, right, in architecting the decision, right, and looking at those local and scalable needs, and obviously the usability of automating that decision, pressure testing that before the build phase, architecting the adoption and the scalability, incorporating that feedback, and then tracking the value and the adoption at scale. And that's an important step of really designing for overall excellence. I would say that the third one, and actually I would say the third and fourth one really together, is how do you establish that holistic foundation, data foundation across the regions and the lines of businesses with scalable data from an integration architecture perspective, but also with the right environment strategy. And this one took us a while in conjunction with a lot of help from Aera architects to really address the challenge of what's that right environment and integration strategy, um, and how do you do that in a way that supports the scale but kind of minimizes all the complexity, right? And there's some big decisions to be made. Do you have a single global environment? Do you have multiple environments? If you have multiple environments, does those environments segment by region or by line of business? I mean, these are the things that we really had to wrestle with. And in partnering with Aera, we evaluated these big questions on a couple of dimensions, right? What was going to be the impact of the platform, integration, maintenance, decision, data model, and analytics, skill development, and just overall maintenance, and in particular, how did we want to enhance the existing use cases in the future, right? So those were, that was probably of the wheel, the 6 points on the wheel. Those two were, I would say, more the meatier ones, for certain. We on the fifth one here, value realization and continuous improvement. I would say that we took a systemic approach, right, to value and improvement, and it was really through managing through a COE, right, that would drive what I would say, critical and ongoing adoption and value capture, right, and using through client champions, and initial support by ourselves, as well as Aera. I would say that you have to envision the COE consisting of design authority and value tracking, definitely performance monitoring, and that's monitoring of the initial performance, and then letting the skill operate in an autonomous way, responsibly, using incorporating user feedback and overall experience, and just using getting opportunities to identify where there's enhancement through some just really good root cause analysis. Lastly, and then Eduardo, we can talk a little more. When you think about change management operating model, it's very different than what we are traditionally used to from supply chain transformations. There's and when you think about this globally, I would suggest that there's a need to set up a central transformation office to really help drive that level of standardization and consistency from a change management and ways of working perspective, and really equipping the client with those consistent change and functional process support that allows for parallel waves of agile design and development, as well as establishing day in the life training from a playbook perspective that allows that training to be deployed in a consistent way. And it's not just about using the skill, but it's also taking the lessons learned from the earlier deployments and how to drive that adoption, and as well as exhibit that transparency and that explainability of what the skill is actually doing before you let it go autonomously. So these are important pieces. And there's also, if you think about, okay, you're now deploying Aera in a globally, but really in a local way, at some point, right, you're going to have the development of solution architects that are in these local lines of businesses or geos, and you have to assess that initial set of skills, right?
Right.
So that they can have and develop into, strong Aera skill building capabilities themselves, right? Which is quite important. So, this is all, kind of new in regards to, what we call ways of working, or truly taking on that human plus machine mindset. But we think these are core principles to operate from when you think about, I would say scaling decision intelligence, globally in a responsible way.
Yeah, got that. Chris, thanks so much for sharing the approach. I actually have a couple of takeaways from this one, or reactions. So one of them is the thoughtful approach early on good design, whether it's on the ideation front to ensure that you have a structured methodology that can be used to have then the right level of automation at each level. To your point, some decisions might require more automation. So the way you have a taxonomy and you're able to segment decisions by the level of automation, and then by region, business unit, like that classification, if you will, and all the work up front definitely pays off. And of course, followed by what you mentioned about the design governance, and the data strategy, and all those elements are critical. So that's one that, again, I think lesson learned from what I've seen, it definitely pays off to do that up front. And then two, and I think you mentioned this, you alluded to it right now, is this really enhances the human side of the transformation. I think very often when customers think about deploying Aera and decision intelligence capability, decision automation, and AI, it's definitely a technology, and it is a very powerful technology in which a lot of the work gets digitized, right? It's new work that you were not doing. It's work that you were doing before, but now you can do it better, you can do it faster. And I
Mm-hmm.
think all these elements really complement nicely. Okay, how do we get organized to actually get the most out of the tool? But then more importantly, I think what you have at the end, that adoption, scaling, and then the governance for change management, I think that's, if I think about it in the world today, very much needed across a lot of clients out there looking to do this and scale it. So yeah, absolutely, very powerful concept here. Why don't we finish with? I think it would be important for the audience to know for this particular engagement, and I know there's multiple stories, but can you talk about the value creation? You mentioned here value realization and tracking. Anything you can share around value accrued to date and the impact to date?
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep it. I'll keep it to three buckets, right? I mean, we think of value these days beyond just your operational supply chain effective KPIs, right? Of course, those are important, but I think when you're stepping into, I'll say, sophisticated decision science, you have an opportunity to go much broader than that, right? You have an opportunity to go broader than, driving, service up and cost down and improving, inventory availability. You have an opportunity to drive, not just effectiveness of operating your supply chain, but efficiency, right? Because this is getting people elevated out of tactical decision making, and you also have the opportunity of driving, the 30, which is just a greater experience, right? A greater experience of really understanding how you can responsibly use artificial intelligence and autonomous capabilities, or in Aera's terms, powerful decision science, right? Which is, or decision intelligence, which is very impactful. So it really does hit across your effectiveness of effectively operating your supply chain and efficiently, elevating your game, and having an overall better experience of managing some very complex decisions on a day-to-day basis and executing to them more effectively.
Great. No, thanks. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, definitely a very comprehensive view on value creation. And we typically think about it those ways, right? And I think a key takeaway is in most of these transformations, if not all, there's new value that's being created. It's levers that were not possible to use before because you just didn't have the capacity to make all these decisions. So existing decisions, everything you mentioned is absolutely right. But then there's all this spectrum of long tail of decisions that nobody was able to make before, the unmade decisions. And I think the combination is what makes it so powerful. But anyway, I think we're running out of time. Chris, I really appreciate you spending the time with us today. I want to thank you for the insights on the story, and I'm sure anyone in the audience, if they have questions, they will be able to reach out to any of us. And yeah, thanks again for joining, and for the audience for spending time with us today. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.